Welcome to Exposing the Hidden Reality. I'm Annette, career reinvention coach and caffeine-powered human.
And I'm Sandra, women's life and leadership coach. I bring the woo to our conversations.
And this is the podcast where we call out all the unspoken stuff, biases, outdated expectations, and all the things women navigate in work and in life.
Yes. We bring to light what we see happening. Smart, capable women stuck in the same patterns because no one really talks about what's going on.
We'll bring some difficult truths.
Welcome, insightful experts.
And sprinkle in a little chaos and fun.
It wouldn't be us if we didn't, right? So whether you're walking the dog or tuning in during your commute, we're glad you're here. Let's do this.
Let's do this. You want to do the let's do this together? Like 3, 2, 1, let's do this. All right, 3, 2, 1. Let's do this. We tried to coordinate, really.
It never gets old listening to us fumble that.
I think it is so fun, Sandra. We are probably the only two in the world that think it's so fun, but that's okay.
It's true.
And we have a wonderfully special guest joining us today. So Claire is one of my people. She is also a career coach. So I'm so excited to talk with her and how she does things in her business and how she helps people. But Claire, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes, thank you. It's great to be here today. So yes, I'm Claire. I'm a career and leadership coach, and I mostly work with women who are at a crossroads in their career. So whether they're burnt out, they're ready for a change, or they're just ready for something else and they don't know what it is yet. Before coaching, I spent the last 20 years working in human resources roles in places like Google and Grammarly. And so I've seen firsthand the challenges that people face in the workforce, and specifically women. So now I'm helping women full-time as my job, make those transitions and make them with more clarity and confidence.
Women in IT, my favorite topic. I spent 30 plus years in IT before I turned to my woo-woo magic, as I like to call it. It's a tough place for women in IT.
Yes, it definitely is. And even in the last number of years, although the percentage of women in IT is growing, it's still, the growth is so slow. I feel it's like 1 step forward, 2 steps backwards.
Oh, wow. Wow. And you had a chance to work in the AI space, like kind of early on then, right? Especially Grammarly, which was technically AI before anybody was really talking about it in those terms.
Yeah, so Grammarly, actually, most people know the name, and specifically here in the US, because I think so many people use it during college when they're doing their thesis and all of those things. But Grammarly has been around for almost 15 years, so long before anybody knew about AI, but it was just known as like the spell checker, and, people thought of it like that. And then obviously a few months after I joined Grammarly in 2022, 2 months later, ChatGPT launched in the November of that year. And, the world just changed overnight then. And then suddenly the space became very, very crowded, very, very competitive. And I think it's fair to say, like, the race is still on. And I particularly feel it here, like living in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, for sure. I like to call my Grammarly grandma because I feel like she corrects my English to like this very old fashioned speak. And I'm like, no, I don't want to talk about that. Dismiss.
Yeah, I mean, it's come on. So it's advanced so much over the last number of years.
Yeah.
Now, if you use Grammarly and you're like a subscriber, it learns how you speak. It writes your emails in the tone that you have that it's learned the way you talk. So it's really mind blowing how far we've come over the last few years.
It's amazing. So amazing. So I want to kind of talk about performance struggles, because I think that's a maybe an overlooked piece of career management. We're always like talking about, oh, I need to get a new job. Oh, I want to get a new job. Oh, I have to get out of this. I want to get away from my toxic boss. But what about what happens every day, day to day in your career and how people are handling it, managing it, making sure that they can have longevity and kind of avoid burnout. Is that something that you work on as well with your clients?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, the word burnout is just such common language today. I think and let's say even 5 years ago, you said, oh, I've been out of work with burnout, people would kind of stop and say, really? Oh, tell me more about that. Now it's just part of like a regular lunch conversation. People are just like, oh, I feel burnt out. I feel burnt out. I've just come back from leave, all sorts of things. So it's just become like so normal in a way that we almost dismiss it. And of course, burnout, like so many things, you can just be mildly burnt out, or you can have like really severe burnout to the point that, you could be out of the workforce for a number of months trying to recover. So burnout is a very hot topic. And I think linked to what we were just already talking about, with the AI race, companies in the tech space, people are working longer and longer because it's like, who's gonna get there first? And so a lot of CEOs and startups at the moment, when they're advertising jobs and interviewing people, they're actually saying to them, like, can you work the 9-9-6 shift, which is basically 9 to 9, 6 days a week? I don't know if you guys have seen this in the press recently. And if people say, no, sorry, I'm not signing up to work on a Saturday, then they're like, well, you're not the right person for the job here because it's AI and we need people who are going to stick it out like for the whole marathon. And so I don't think that's healthy. And I think that kind of culture and people promoting it as something we should be striving for is the opposite message that we want to send out to people.
Wow, 9-9-6. I've never heard that until just now. And it seems like a really far reaction to where we were during the pandemic because people were getting more balance, right? People were talking about how it was nice not to commute. Now there's return to office. Now there's 9-9-6. Like where do corporations draw the line so that employees don't feel pressured to keep up at that level all the time?
Mm-hmm. And I think this is what's so hard because I think the majority, I'm jumping straight to the end, I think the majority of people in the tech world, like they really do feel the pressure. I think there's very few people that you would meet that's in one of those big tech companies or in a startup saying, oh, it's kind of easy. So I think everyone's definitely feeling the pressure. And you asked me a question before that and I've lost my train of thought. Would you mind repeating, Jeanette?
No, that's okay. So let's go back to the pressure. How come we let big corporations, we let CEOs, we let that drive the culture, right? Because that's not just, we've got this project to finish up next week. Can we pull a 9-9-6 this week and next? They're talking about from the day you start, I need you here 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. That's intense. And that's got to be the whole culture. What else is there time for?
Yeah. And I feel like every number of years, the pendulum swings between it's employer friendly versus it's employee friendly. Yeah. And during the pandemic, it was firmly over on the employee side. Like employees were working from home. Companies were thankful that people were working from home. It was the first time we ever did this at scale indefinitely, Yeah. And people were being very empathetic because of what was happening around the world, people losing loved ones, etc. It was like a turbulent time for everyone and probably in a slightly different way, depending on where you lived and where you worked. And if you had kids and you were trying to homeschool them and do your job, like that whole thing. But coming back to where we are today, I think because of the race for AI and a lot of layoffs happening on a regular basis here in Silicon Valley, like I would say probably for the last 3 years, it's been like a rolling round of layoffs. So now there's job scarcity. There's lots of highly employable expert people on the market, but the job market is so tough that even if you're amazing, you may at the moment find it really hard to get a job. And so I feel like for people who are stuck, it's really difficult because if there's tons of jobs out there, people are more willing to take a risk or they're more willing to walk away from a bad situation. And they're like, I'll be fine because there's loads of jobs out there. I'm highly employable, etc. Yeah. But I see at the moment, like a lot of people are saying that it can take them anything from 6 months to 9 months at the moment to find a job, which is, just a huge amount of time. And then companies are continuing, not all companies, but a lot of companies out there are continuing to say, if somebody leaves from our company, unless there's a business case as to why AI cannot do that person's job, we're not going to rehire. So even if a company had 100 vacancies at the beginning of the year, the senior team may have already cut 50 and saying, oh, AI can pick up those 50 roles. It's going to be much more cost effective. And therefore, the number of roles out there is smaller and the number of people is greater.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of things that I want to interject.
Yes. Please do.
Sandra, of course, you've been very quiet.
Well, no, but I've been writing my thoughts down because, I'm at that age where things come in and out. And if I don't write them down, I forget them.
Me too.
So I think one of the things that so many places to go with this conversation, but I think one of the places that I'd like to touch on is this, as somebody who worked in IT for a long time, I think this idea of 996 has been a part of the job for a really long time. We just never talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
Not in the way that we're talking about it now. And I think that part of it started back in the BlackBerry days when, executives were so excited about being able to carry a personal device and get their email and be able to respond to it because they were out of the office and traveling. And that started to erode these boundaries of this is my home time versus my work time. And then, you got laptops and you could take them home and, it was nothing to just jump on after dinner and answer a couple of emails, or to take, to take time to finish up some things that I hadn't finished up after the kids went to bed. And so I think this has kind of been happening. And from an IT perspective, I always worked in infrastructure, so it didn't matter if you were in the middle of dinner at a show, the servers just picked a wrong time to go out.
Mm-hmm.
So you're called anyway. But the idea that this is now proliferated beyond the IT space simply because we have allowed the idea of I can be accessible anywhere at any time because of these devices.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I also think in the last maybe 2 or 3 years, this whole idea of this hustle culture, as it's a term used a lot in the US, I don't hear it so much in Europe, but it's seen as a badge of honor. So if you are connected all the time, if you are replying to emails at midnight, some people think you look like super dedicated and you're going to be up for a promotion. And then there's another school of thought that people say, well, you're obviously not very effective at your job if you're up till midnight doing your emails, and maybe you could manage your time better. But I think like the hustle culture is put up on a pedestal as this is something people should aim for in corporate America. If you're doing well in your job, the PR, the marketing around it is that, you're going to be working long hours, you're going to be dedicated to your job, you're going to give it your all, and of course you're going to work on your vacation and in your evenings.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, one of the things that I talk about with women in particular a lot is that one of the reasons that burnout is such a prevalent thing amongst women is because one of the things that I think we miss about burnout is not that it is I am tired. It is that I am emotionally exhausted. And we depend on women in particular to pick up the pieces of the emotional load at work. Mm-hmm. Who do you go into to talk about, the boss that's driving you crazy or the insensitive colleague? Do you go to your male peer or do you go to your female peers, right? So they are dealing with all of that, carrying that. And on top of that, really kind of when the team is struggling or the team needs a pick-me-up or the team we're trying to gauge the emotional connection within the team, who do we task with that activity? we task the women in our group,
Usually.
Mhm.
Yeah.
right? Maybe some of them aren't as astute, pointing to myself, as others, but the whole point is that women really do take on the emotional load at home and at work.
Mm.
And that is what really causes us, I think, to really feel that emotional weight. Like I'm ineffective because I can't shift it. We
Mhm.
take on other people's emotional load and it's not ours to carry.
Yeah, and I think it happens just very naturally, you know, and I think women, like definitely speaking for myself, we're just prone to absorb it. And that's probably why we're in those kind of roles as human resources business partner, counselor, therapist, whatever kind of a role you're in. A huge percentage of them is women. Yes, there is a percentage of men, but people are taking on that emotional load every day as well as all the other things. And then I think women get to a point where they're just overloaded. They're just struggling to keep their head above water, if we use that expression. And I think we were making progress until COVID. And then I think we saw the number of women who we lost and dropped out of the workforce during COVID. We've like regressed so much because any of the additional load in the house that needed to be picked up, the female, you know, either quit their job or reduce their hours or set up their own business, etc., because they needed to do the extra stuff. And it's very hard for two people to do it. And so I think COVID and the pandemic really highlighted that.
I agree. Yeah, it really brought it into the forefront and made it so much more obvious.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we turn this around? How can we start to make shifts so that this isn't the way it operates all the time at work for women specifically?
Yeah, I would say a few things. I think the first thing is mindset, right? Oftentimes we're just so in it with our blinkers on that we can't get out of it. And we don't even see that we're, gone down into not a great place because that's just become your new norm. So I think having the mindset to, periodically step back and take stock of, is your job still working for you? Are you in control of your job, or is like it controlling you? How much sacrifices are making for your job are you versus potentially like family or friends, etc.? And if it's always the job and it's skewed to that angle, then I think it's obvious. Sometimes people have to get to a kind of a breaking point, I think, before it becomes super clear, or they get a health scare, unfortunately, or something like that, because then they realize that we're not superhuman and that even we cannot power through whatever has come up. And that scares people. And then they get that reality check, and they say, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to I think inevitably they change the company and the culture they're working for, because usually where they're working is set up to be type A profile people who want to do really, really well. And I think that's why we see in midlife people often like stepping away from their corporate roles and the corporate ladder and becoming a lot more entrepreneurial. And even in the last number of years, the amount of women setting up their own businesses has grown phenomenally. I can't think of the percentage off the top of my head, but it has more than doubled in the last few years, which I think is really exciting. Mm-hmm. And it's women taking back control of their careers, them being in the driving seat and saying, let me find a role that works for me, my situation, my family, versus being constantly stressed, tired, suffering from anxiety, and always feeling like you're playing catch up. Because, life goes by super quickly, and before you know it, 10 years at a company can have happened and you're still in this kind of high pressure role. And the longer you're in it, the harder it is almost to step away, because you get used to the salary and the generous benefits and all those kind of things. And sometimes you become very, just kind of limited your expertise to that one company.
Yes.
You're not very flexible to go back out onto the market, maybe.
Yeah, you could be super specialized at that point. Yes.
Yeah.
I call it the golden handcuffs.
Yes. It is commonly referred to here in Silicon Valley, the golden handcuffs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Annette has some one of the things I love to listen to Annette talk about is we do a really good job, I think, of transitioning careers. We don't often do a really good job of managing our career. So I don't know if you see that as well, or if maybe it might help for Annette to clarify what.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we get caught in like the temporary buzz of getting a new job. Also thinking that getting a new job will solve this burnout problem, right?
Mhm.
However, we're the same person that we were in the last job, and we just bring that person to the new job with us. Probably we're the problem, or a big portion of the problem, our expectations, our work style, how we hate to say no, that can cause it. But do you think we have an opportunity as career coaches, as leadership coaches, as somebody that's been there, done that, to say, listen, it's the day-to-day management. It's the thing that you do when you're not career transitioning that's probably going to have the biggest impact on your career.
Yeah, totally. So as you said, like when we transition to a new role, we're still the same person with the same habits and work style and everything that we've had. And it's probably gotten us to where we are today. So in some ways, it has been successful.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go into a new job. And yeah, I think sometimes people set new boundaries once they go into a new job for a while. Some people are able to maintain it because they just reset those with a new manager, or maybe the company just has a different ethos or a different value system, and it's more in line with what the person is looking for. We also, evolve so much during our career. The things that are important to us in our 20s are going to be different to the things that are important to us in our 40s when we're looking for an employer. Mm-hmm. So I think, when you're younger, you're just happy you have a job and you're learning and you're progressing, etc. And then as you progress in your career, it's very much about like the type of work you're doing. Are you being given the right opportunities? Does your manager like really support you? And are they in that meeting room promoting you, like in terms of just, showing your work? So all of those kind of things become more important as you get more senior in your role. But I think, like our day-to-day role is one that we spend so much time at work that you need to enjoy. And of course, there's always, let's say, 20% of a role that nobody likes. It's that stuff nobody wants to do, like file our expense reports and, go into Workday and do a whole bunch of tickets, the kind of stuff. Everybody has their pet peeve of what they don't like doing, but that's just the life of having a job. But the 80% of the time, I think you really it's a waste if you're doing a job where you're just unhappy, trying to get through every day and feeling, just kind of miserable, unfortunately. And too many people, I think, stay in those situations because they think, I won't find another job. Like they've told themselves, I'm not employable. I won't find another job out there. They're just terrified of the whole thought of like tackling the job market as it is right now. Yeah. Some people don't know what they want to do, and they kind of always don't know what they want to do. So in the absence of knowing, they say, oh, I'll just stay where I am. Mm-hmm. And there's like so many more things, but I think, particularly for women, flexibility at work is a huge thing. If you've worked somewhere for a number of years and you've managed to get a level of flexibility, whether it's, you're minding children, or you have caregiving responsibilities, or you just have a hobby that you're really, really passionate about, that you only want to work 44 days a week. If you've managed to nail that flexibility somewhere and you have the trust of your management team, women are very reluctant to give that up. And they think if they go somewhere else, they won't get it. And I can see their point. It's almost like it's a chicken and egg situation. But if you never take the chance, then you'll never know. And you can always go back to your old life. Like you can always go back there.
Yeah, that is so hard. And I hear that a lot from a lot of women. I'm going into the unknown. I'm taking a risk. What if I can't? What if I can't? And then not even trying. But you have to at least explore what's out there. And I think it's important to explore even if you are happy, right? You should still take that recruiter's phone call if they give you a cold call or they send you a LinkedIn message. You should explore what it is. Maybe you find through that exploration that you're underpaid. or there's a lot more opportunity, or maybe this company's doing something really cool that sounds like it's going to be a match for your interests. Take the meetings, take the calls, because that's the only other way you're going to figure out what the market's doing while you've got your head down trying to do a really good job at what you're doing currently.
Yeah,
It may also convince you that you're in a good place.
Oh, it could.
Yeah, I was going to say, I totally agree with both of you. I think, Sandra, to your point, yeah, sometimes through these exercises, you can realize, actually, I am paid at the top end of my job band. That's really good to know. Or people realize that they have certain benefits, because often it's just like, it's not just about salary to salary. Some companies, you have a huge benefits package, or you have equity, or you're in a bonus scheme. And when you look at the total compensation for the whole year, it can be very different. It's going to be very different than just the base salary. But I think it's always worth knowing your value on the market and taking those calls, and because you never know. And in the turbulence of today's job market, it's good to have a network of recruiters or people that you're just generally in touch with, so that if you, for any reason, lost your job or were out of work, that you don't have to start like cold, where it's like going to take months to warm up, almost like the machine. So yeah, and you never know. You often hear stories of people saying, I took this one call, and years later they turned out to be this hugely successful person doing this thing, and it almost seems like it was meant for them.
Yeah, I love that. And also taking the call in the freak chance that that opportunity is not for you. You could always refer someone. I'm sure you know someone that's out of work, or somebody that's a better match even than you would be. And that's where you want to use your opportunity to benefit somebody else. So yeah, take the call. Tell them, Claire, take the call.
Yeah, 100% take the call.
So what would you say, Claire, is most important for women to remember while they're participating in the workplace?
Great question.
Ooh, that is a great question.
Thank you. I practice.
I know. Now I'm going to have to come up with a good answer, Sandra. Let me see. Well, the first one that springs to mind is just what we talked about, is know your worth and your value in the market. Know your skill sets. Know the amount of women I talk to, and I ask them, like, what are your top 2 strengths? Just to see if they can say them off the top of their head, or, if they even know. So many women, they don't know. And if you get that call, like we were just talking about, out of the blue, when somebody asks you, like, what are your top 2 skills, and you don't know, it just shows kind of like your level of self-awareness in the market. So I think too often as women, we put other people first. And I think that's on the home front, but also on the work front, because we often think, oh, I'll make sure my team are looked after first, and I'll make sure my team are promoted, and so on. And we're always carrying the load across the company for a lot of teams, especially as a human resources business partner. But who looks after you? Like, who looks after the HR people? Typically, actually, in my experience, the more senior you get, the less career conversations you have.
Yes.
They're not like formal career conversations like you have when you're at the early part of your career, and your manager needs to tick the box to say, yes, I had career conversation with Claire today. She's happy. As you get more senior, these conversations are not scheduled, and it's a lot about just being like, I think, like, having EQ, knowing what's going on with your peer group, your manager, whoever you interact with a lot. Like, if you interact with the CEO, and a lot of senior leadership do those office hours, where you can just go and talk to them for 15 minutes about anything, because they want to be super transparent. I think as women, we often don't take up those advantages, because we say, what would I have to go and talk to a person about? My idea is probably silly, because we have so much self-doubt sometimes, or imposter syndrome. But there's so many guys queuing to put their name on the office hours list to go in. And even if they don't have an idea, they're just like, oh, I'm just making a connection. And, it's well known that when women look at a job description, and if they're thinking of applying, even if they're missing 1 or 2 of the things, they say, oh, I won't apply because, I can't do X and Y. But typically then, if a guy is looking at a job description, even if he's missing a handful, he'll go, oh, I'll just apply, And it's the same when men and women write their performance reviews within the company. If 2 people have done the exact same work, and you were to read just on paper, their performance reviews, I bet they would read like very, very differently.
Mhm.
So in a nutshell, I would say, yeah, knowing your worth, being really proactive about your career and owning it, and not taking a backseat thinking your manager will, you know, do it for you, because oftentimes managers move on and a year later you have a new person. Take advantage of those opportunities to go and talk to senior leaders or go to social events at work. And I would say, like, you really do need, as a woman, based on my experience in the tech industry, you do really need to advocate for yourself.
Mhm.
Because sometimes we just make the assumption that somebody else is, or we think, oh, I don't want to push it because, you know, I don't want to upset my manager. But so many other people are talking to them about, when am I getting promoted? When am I getting a salary increase? And just hoping that it will work out for you, I think, is not where we want to be. You really have to get into the driving seat and own your career, and then drive those conversations. And they're not always easy, and sometimes it's a bit awkward, but at least you've started that dialogue with your manager and you've got the ball rolling. And I think they often respect you more for coming and having the courage to ask about your salary and ask about your performance review, etc.
Yes. And it gets easier as you do it.
Yes.
And then the other piece is women are much less likely than men in the workplace to get anecdotal real-time feedback. So establishing those more formal meetings, keeping them related to your career conversation is more important than ever, because it might be the only times when you get that kind of candor from your leadership or a project partner. And then the other piece that I would add to yours is to talk about it. Talk about what you've done, talk about your accomplishments, talk about the successes, talk about the lessons that you've learned, because no one's going to know that unless you advertise it. And my favorite book, called Brag Better by Meredith Feynman, she says it's not bragging if it's the truth. So as long as you're talking about it, it's not bragging. And so it shouldn't feel icky, and you'll get better at it.
Yeah, I think you have to constantly remind your manager, your leadership team, of what you're doing, because there's so much happening in these companies, right? They're running at speed all the time. They have tons of employees. If you're not, you know, telling them, reminding them, I've done X, Y, and Z, I've hit my targets, etc., then it's just a missed opportunity. And I think, yeah, to start, it's icky. But then you realize, oh, nothing bad came of that. Maybe I'll do it again this week, and maybe I'll do it again the following week. And then it just becomes natural.
It does.
One of the, I think, big aha books for me, especially as a woman, was The No Club. And one of the things that they talk about in The No Club is that as women, we take on those pet projects, those, you know, initiatives that they're not part of our regular job, but, you know, it's important, and it's like housework, right? Because no one gets kudos for taking out the garbage or doing the dishes, but they all have to be done, right? No one gets kudos for planning the office party, or, you know, hiring the college recruits, or, you know, mentoring the college recruits. And so what ends up happening is, as women, we take those things on, and then they become a greater part of our job. And because those aren't things that are the money-making parts of our job, they're not the things that we get performance rated on, then we look like we're not as productive as some of our counterparts.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point. And I think it's definitely evolved in the tech world, I've seen in the last number of years, particularly in engineering teams where it is very male dominated. I've seen in meetings in the last number of years I was in, pleasantly surprised that a guy would always say, oh, I'll take the notes, and open his laptop straight away. And just it became like part of their culture. But I think, I'm hoping that's not like the rarity and it's becoming more normal, but I don't have insight into other industries. But you're right, like organizing Christmas party, all the kind of, yeah, they're no one's job, and they're not part of performance review. And you could spend like 30 or 40% of your time, depending on the time of year, doing these kind of events. So I think it's setting boundaries at work in terms of like the type of work that you're getting, And it's also the type of work you put your hand up for, because I don't know if you know that expression, like, be careful what you're good at. Make sure that you are not good at taking notes sometimes, or you're not good at doing the laundry at home so that somebody else might magically do it. So I think it's being a bit strategic about it as well, and not just putting up your hand, and being comfortable in that awkward silence when it's in a meeting room and they're saying, who's going to take the notes? And there's just silence. And it's like, well, someone's eventually going to speak.
Yes. Yes. And I think one of the other things that they pointed out in the book is that sometimes you want those special pet projects, right? Because they expose you to people you might not be exposed to on a regular basis, and they get an opportunity to work directly with you. But when you get those opportunities, it's really important to negotiate how your engagement is going to work.
Yes.
And that it doesn't become a case where what you expected might happen isn't part of the equation at all. And I think Annette has a great example of, hey, you got put on the night shift.
Oh, yeah. I got put on the night shift many, many, many years ago, but it literally ruined my life. And I was under the impression it was a temporary assignment, and they were under the impression that it was what I was signing up for long term, like the last person that had it for, I don't know, 15, 20 years. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So yes, it's important to negotiate. And maybe even before you negotiate, it's important to ask questions. What is this? Special assignment, pet project? What does it mean for my primary responsibilities? What does it mean for my priorities? And what does it mean for me long term? And until you know those clearly, I would not sign up for third shift for anything.
Or any other pet project.
Or any other pet project. Wait, did I say that out loud? Yes. Agreed.
Yeah, I think the most important question that you mentioned there, Annette, was what's in it for me long-term career-wise. I think that's like the primary one for someone to think about. And if there isn't a huge amount maybe in it, then I think the other lens the person can look at it is, am I learning a brand new skill here, or getting invaluable experience that I wouldn't normally get? Or am I going to get to work with these people who are going to open a lot of other doors? So even if you're not maybe getting a lot from it, from a work perspective, but personally in personal growth and building relationships, you're getting a lot from it, then it could be like a really smart move.
Yes.
Such a good way to evaluate opportunities, pet projects, special projects. They can really be amazing, but if it's not clear what you're willing to do, they could be a ball and chain for sure.
Yeah. I've seen a lot when I particularly worked at Google, because it's such a big company. People, we had a lot of employee resource groups. So we had like the women's group, and we had the Gigglers group, and as many as you could imagine. And the people there was always like a person who ran those groups. And then the larger they got, they would have like a committee and stuff. And the people who raised their hand for those, it was all just part of their job. But they were so passionate about the topic that they always did an amazing job, because it was like their thing. And it's so great when you get to do something you love as part of your job, and you can spend like 20% of your time thinking about how we develop the women's community at Google. Like, what kind of an awesome job is that to have? So I think being tuned into what are the things you're really passionate about in the company, and where is that activity happening? Because a lot of companies do have employee resource groups and, a lot of activities that happen voluntarily out of work.
Agreed. And those are extra special places for visibility. And then you're actually building something. So the impact you can have on the larger organization is wonderful and amazing. So make sure that you go in with an intention to do that, and then also track it, right? Those would be things, because although they may not be like a strategic goal on your performance review, it could be your larger impact. You could talk about it in the competency section of your performance review. And those are very transferable skills that you could use in any role that you take.
Yeah. And I think often there are those projects or those achievements, they can really separate you from somebody else if you're going for an interview, because everyone's done, let's call it the day job, and we're all kind of doing it the same. it's like the cherry on top of like these extra things people have managed to deliver. And I think oftentimes those stretch projects give that level of visibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I completely agree. Wonderful. Well, Claire, it's been spectacular talking to you. Can you tell us a little bit more about when we can reach you when this broadcast is over?
Yes, of course. So I'm growing my business at the moment, and I have people reaching out, discussing one-on-one coaching opportunities. But you can find me on LinkedIn, Claire Campion, career and leadership coach for women, and that's a good starting point. And there's a link from there to my website, etc. So looking forward to chatting to anybody who'd like to discuss any of these topics a bit more.
Such good stuff. Thank you, Claire.
Thanks for sharing all of your expertise.
You for having me.
Of course. Thank you. That's a wrap on this episode of Exposing the Hidden Reality. If something hit home or made you snort laugh, tell us.
Seriously, we love hearing from you. Message us, tag us, or send us coffee. We love coffee.
And hey, leave a review. It helps more women find us and boosts our egos.
Which are like fragile, like suspiciously fragile.
True. All right, until next time, keep questioning, keep growing, and if all else fails,
Blame the dog.
See you next time. Wait, did we stop recording?
No, we're still here. You have to push the red button.
Red button. Cool. Just eternal podcast.
Bye.
Bye.